The speaker, I think, really.
Yeah.
like,
Susan, can you hear us? Bring a little more order to
At a brewery, people weren't paying attention to the speaker. That's so weird.
And you talked a lot about like art installations, and so it was fun.
My number one consideration, I'll figure it out.
She just is
I start
testing.
dying.
We're definitely gonna need a few more people. Yeah.
I saw cars just driving.
Hi Susan, can you hear us okay? Perfect, do you mind just unmuting yourself so we can make sure we can hear you?
Yeah, hi there.
Perfect, that's great, thank you so much.
Joke.
Yeah, I think we, between trying to.
Helen, can you hear us okay?
Nephews, so I-
Yeah.
So I-
Great, thank you.
About going, went on the last trip recently.
We're very excited you're here.
Feels so wanted tonight.
Hello, ma'am. That was me phoning you.
Thank you.
I just got an email from the province.
Okay, are we ready to go? Great, so we're gonna start because there's a lot on the agenda today. I'll call the meeting to order. Item number 2 is the adoption of the agenda, and we just wanted to make one change, is move 6.4 ahead of 6.3. So if I can have someone who can move adoption of the agenda with that one change. Thank you, Dawn, and seconded by Alex. All in favor? Good, that is approved. Item number 3 is adoption of the minutes from February 15th. Can I have someone move adoption of minutes? Thank you, Alex. Seconded by Alex M. Moved by Alex P. Seconded by Alex M. All in favor? And any opposed? That carries. There's no presentations or delegations, so we're gonna go right into our reports. Item 6.1 is the Good Neighbor bylaw, and we have Ken here who's gonna present on that.
Sure, so the very first item is an update on our Good Neighbor bylaw. Actually presenting on will be our Senior Manager of Audit Services, she's very pleased to introduce her.
Thank you all. Just make sure this works and I do it the right way. All right, so we're here today to provide BIPAC with an update on our proposed changes to the city's Good Neighbor bylaw. So these changes council has not seen them, they're proposed, so we're looking for some input from this committee. I'll give you a little background, a legal context. As you may or may not know, the city is a child of statutes, so our authority is delegated through the province, and for the bylaws and bylaw services, our authority comes under the community charter. Sections that are relevant to the Good Neighbor bylaw are, in a nutshell, those sections that allow us to regulate nuisances and disturbances and allow us to do some forced cleanups and recover costs as a debt against taxes, and also to impose fees. So bylaw services, who are we? We provide services to the community and as well as our internal partners to ensure that the city's bylaws are complied with for the overall benefit of the community. So livability and public safety are our two mandate umbrellas. So the Good Neighbor bylaw was adopted in 2003. The city routinely amends its bylaws, and it's really to meet community needs, changing regulations, and sometimes council priorities, and just to ensure that they're relevant. So this proposed bylaw offers some streamlining. We're modernizing it. We're making sure that it meets regulations. And the main mandate of this Good Neighbor bylaw is to promote community well-being and really acknowledging this interconnectedness of issues, which helps us problem solve and enhance the quality of life for all that play and work and live in Abbotsford. Today we're just going to discuss, there's some housekeeping amendments, but today we're discussing some key enhancements to the Good Neighbor bylaw. These are additions, so they're not currently in our bylaws, or they might be in there and they're just enhanced. One of them is the removal of street nuisances from a Good Neighbor bylaw. Those belong more appropriately in a street and traffic bylaw, which we've actually moved them over, and some might just be under police jurisdiction, like the Safe Street Act. We are going to introduce, which we're really excited, regulations to mitigate light pollution. We are broadening our prohibitions against dumping to encompass all forms. And then we are doing some, the big one for us again is fences in buildings. The ones that you can visibly see, those are not in our Good Neighbor bylaw today. So we're actually imposing some regulations there. And then we're mandating security measures for vacant premises and hazard mitigation. The key one today for this table to be aware of is that we are proposing that we remove the standalone controlled substance bylaw and we put it into the Good Neighbor bylaw. There are reasons for this and I'll explain that later. So let's just get right into what we'll do is go through each of those areas. So light pollution, this overall is going to help the prevention of natural environmental issues. You know, our nocturnal animal friends will be happy. It will help our citizens, as we all know, when it's dark, you're at night. It helps with your sleeping. And we've had to do a ton of mediation in this area, both with businesses that have some of these lights that are shining onto our residents, and then residents versus residents as well. Right? So this is new, brand new. We're introducing it. It was already in our Good Neighbor Guide, but what the city was doing is just doing mediation to help. We are enhancing our provisions on illegal dumping. Currently, our provisions limit illegal dumping contraventions to public property, so we would deal with only those dumping on public property. But we have come to see that many people have clued in, and they utilize sometimes vacant properties. A lot of private properties are getting are having these illegal dumping actions, and so we have put regulations in so that if people can provide us with some substantial evidence, one of them being a license plate, let's say, if they see someone dumping, we can actually take some remedial actions against the owner of that vehicle or people that we know. If there's evidence, yes, it's you, then we're going to take actions. This is new. Deterring fences and buildings. This was not in our current bylaw. Really, the city was not we don't regulate fences or the appearance of fences, the aesthetic nature of fences. We just regulate the heights. But now we are putting guidelines in to address these deteriorating buildings, structures, fences, so they can remain free from signs of decay, instability, and make our neighborhoods much more visually appealing and safe, to be honest, because some of these fences would fall over and sometimes onto roadways and then sometimes onto other properties. Enhanced provisions on preventing noxious weeds. This one will assist the city as well. Currently, our bylaw just says, thou shalt get rid of weeds. So people cut their weeds, they use all types of things to cut their weeds, and they come back with a vengeance. So now we've put in regulations that say you will comply with provincial and federal regulations. There will be a reporting mechanism, and this promotes some environmental responsibility, and it prevents those weeds from coming back, which are a real problem, especially on city-owned lands when they come from neighboring properties. Enhancement on vacant premises. This, again, is a big one for the city. The city has done remedial action on a number of properties, Minter Avenue. We've had Juniper, where we've demolished and taken down nuisance properties. We are now putting in mitigation standards to mandate securing vacant premises with fencing, structural barriers, alarm systems if we have to, and security patrols, because we find that there's a lot of absent landowners who have vacant properties. They haven't developed yet, they might be in the process, but we are going to require them to now mitigate some of the impacts we're seeing in our community through this provision. So the big one for us, controlled substance regulations. Today we have a standalone bylaw. It needed to be updated anyways because it needed to add the Cannabis Act. But the reason we brought this bylaw, or we're proposing to bring this bylaw into the Good Neighbor bylaw, is that many landlords or landlords that are away are not aware that we have a standalone controlled substance bylaw, but they are aware that we have a Good Neighbor bylaw. And so most of the controlled substance activities are occurring on private lands, meth labs, you name it, illegal grows. And so we are putting this right into the Good Neighbor bylaw so that it would be very clear that landlords are going to be responsible, landlords, owners, occupiers are going to be responsible for ensuring that their properties align with federal regulations as well as city bylaws. For us, the big one is, and this is to assist our Abbey PD partners, we've put in there and added the fact that any safety inspection that occurs includes those with criminal investigation warrants. Our current bylaw does not have that. So sometimes when the police would go in and execute a warrant, it would be a very gray area and might not be covered under this bylaw. So the controlled substance provisions allows the city to go in. The actual main focus for us with this bylaw is to ensure that properties are hygienically cleaned after the bust. So the bust is not us. The bust has to be police, fire. They go in, they do a do not occupy right away because there's been some type of drug activity. The drug activity that is going to be taking place in here is usually trafficking, production. So not, personal use drugs. That's not what this is about. This is about literally going in and finding a property that's being used as a trafficking headquarter or a meth lab or production or sale. That's what this bylaw is about. And we then come in as a city and we say, hi, property owner, we're so sorry. You probably already know, but here's your fine. It's a big one. Here's your fee, $3,500 first off. Secondly, here's some hygienists that you must hire to go in and clean your property and then let us know. There's a do not occupy. It will not be removed until the building inspector comes in, inspects that everything is good structurally, and then we know that it's hygienically cleaned. So now it's in the Good Neighbor bylaw. And it aligns now with the Cannabis Act and there's a clause in there that allows it to be aligned regardless if these acts change. Yeah, I just wanted to point out today our bylaw enforcement toolkit. This is how we do bylaw services at the City of Abbotsford. Our City Council approved a bylaw compliance strategy, which starts at the left hand of the continuum, awareness, education, where our sweet spot to sit is in the blue area. Verification, initial enforcement. We're trying to facilitate compliance. Right? We really do not like and do not go to the right of the continuum, which is our legal enforcement, until we are able, we have no alternative. We've tried, we've done mediation, we actually provide mediation at the City of Abbotsford. We're going to hopefully be able to sustain that. I'm a mediator, so that's an easy one for us, but I am. I did, yes. That's right. So it's not a formal program yet, but I will have, hopefully we'll have some of our staff trained in mediation that can continue to provide this service long after I'm probably somewhere in Hawaii. Great, yeah, Hawaii. Hawaii is great, why not? So that's where we like to play, in the blue area. We love it. We think it's the best place to be, and we have found that we've got compliance just in that area, and we don't have to always go to the right, but we do go to the right, and with the help of our legal team, we have placed judgments on title. So when we do fines, we actually have a ton of judgments on title right now. We probably have, up to $200,000 tacked on people's homes, and then we go to court if there's still no traction on compliance. So that's my presentation for today. Based on the updates presented, we're hoping to get from this committee some recommendations on how we might enhance public awareness and understanding of these provisions, benefits, or any other input you might have for us today. Thank you.
Great, and thanks for holding the questions. I know we have a lot of reports, so I think for today we'll try to keep the questions to the end of the presentations just so that we can keep moving along. But questions from the committee, and thank you, Lynn and Susan. We see you online, so feel free to ask questions. We need you guys to stick around so we have quorum, so please don't go anywhere. Lynn has a question. We'll start with you.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I had sort of a question about the deteriorating fences and buildings part. Being a person who bought an older property quite some time ago. We struggled with being able to afford permits to take down things that were in pretty bad shape, actually. So can you speak to that a little bit about how you work with these folks to, maybe they can't afford the permits to take down, a building, and they can't also afford to fix the building. So where does that live in your bylaw?
Thank you. Through the chair to Lynn. So again, if you remember our continuum, we start at the left. We do work with property owners, and so we don't require property owners to demolish. What we do require in this bylaw is for them to mitigate and to ensure that their homes are well secured and they're not a public safety issue. At the end of the day, though, if there's a fence that's falling, then it's fallen down, and we will require you to repair. But we do take into consideration on compassionate grounds people's financial situation. That said, if it is a completely deteriorating fence, we will require you to come into compliance, and we might give you some time. So we'll give you time. We have worked with property owners that have those same circumstances, and we will give them some time to comply. So fines are not issued unless there isn't a concerted effort being made. So if people just tell us, I'm not doing anything, we will continue to ask, and then we'll start the fines. And having said that, when we do issue fines, we also have in our bylaw, notice enforcement bylaw, the ability to enter into a compliance agreement. And compliance agreements are usually a year long, and we can give you a phased approach to what you must do. So at the end of the day, we're not looking for fences that meet a certain high standard, but fences that look visually, appealing, or at least are fixed to standard within the neighborhood. That, is within the neighborhood. I hope that answers your question, Lynn.
It does. It concerns me about this sort of neighborhood standard, because Abbotsford's changing so much. We have some older, I'll just say older neighborhoods that are being, as people die or retire, move away, these properties are being sold, and then the houses are demolished, new houses are being built, in some cases much nicer houses, right? And so whose neighborhood aesthetic are you going by, right? And I get concerned because it's so expensive to buy a property and maintain a property anyway, and then for someone to come in arbitrarily and say, your fence is ugly, or what. I want to make sure that it really veers into the safety piece, not the aesthetic piece, I guess, is what I'm going for, because ugly's in the eye of the beholder, right? If it's truly a safety issue, I'm all for mitigating that problem. But just a neighbor complaining because your fence is an ugly brown that I don't like, I want to avoid that kind of situation.
Yes, absolutely, Lynn. That's valuable input, and we do have that ability within our bylaw compliance strategy. We have an area that's discretion, and we absolutely take it. So it's not it's in a sense not a sense that it's not subjective. We actually do look at everything case by case, and we will look at it. And it's usually the manager that deems it, the manager responsible that will deem it unsightly or will place an order. And we look at all of our bylaw enforcement actions case by case. So there is discretion. And the only time that we are required to act is a priority one, which is public safety and an impact to our environment. And the second one is that an action or a contravention is impacting at least 3 or more surrounding residents or businesses. So there is room for discretion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other feedback on the changes? Go ahead, Dawn.
I know there are 6 things we have to get through,
Yeah.
but I think this one's really important.
It is.
So the good neighbor bylaw is bloody brilliant. And because
sometimes people just don't get to where they need to be. Is this going to be reflective on city and rural? Because we are blessed to have both. So this bylaw is going to also cover the rural properties.
Absolutely, yes.
Because so then it then would cover truck parking because of the sound and the light, or because of the reefers, et cetera. If you've got somebody parked right next to you, is that going to cover that?
Through the chair, no, Don, that truck parking and is covered under a zoning bylaw. The sound and noise is covered under sound regulation bylaw. The good neighbor bylaw, and if you're talking about light pollution, this is, well, you know, we don't see trucks having lights throughout the night. This is more veered towards some of the lights that are there all night. When people have lights on and they're pointed to their neighbors, or businesses have these security lights that are pointed to their neighbors. But with regard to truck parking, we already have a mechanism within the city to deal with those, and that's within the zoning bylaw, and the sound and the noise is within the sound regulation bylaw.
Okay, so which, thank you for that. It leads to then all of the many greenhouses. I own one. So that's light pollution, because those darn things have to come on early and have to be on late. Sometimes in some portions it's on 24 hours. Is this going to cover that, or is it?
No, again, through the chair to Don, it will not cover that because that's under the Right to Farm Act. So if light is required for a certain activity or farm
Unfortunately.
activity, yes, then that would be exempted from this provision, and we'll look into it to make sure that it is very clear.
Very clear.
Yes.
Because it's a big issue. It's a, no pun intended, growing issue.
Absolutely.
Yes, tip your waiter. So once again, I am representing rural at the moment, but soil dumping is covered under here. You mentioned it.
Nope.
Okay, then I'm not moving on. The dates for the lights. Diwali this year was outside of that window, and it is called the Festival of Lights, and we have a large South Asian contingent, so we might want to check on the dates that your light, it said November 15th to January 20th or something. I can't remember exactly what it said.
Yes.
And Diwali was, I think, November 1st this year. So it's just, that's when it's just like our Christmas lights are, I think that's what you're trying to cover there. So just an awareness.
Thank you for that, Don, and I believe we have that covered under a bylaw with regards to the exemptions, but we will look at that. Again, we would have discretion. It's again, we don't just go, it's not a black and white, like for us, and that's why we're so grateful for the bylaw compliance policy that we have, which gives us some guidelines on when we must act and then when we can take discretion. And this would be absolute discretion based on diversity and cultural
I think that when we're writing these bylaws, these kind of identifiers like Diwali, we know it's going to happen every year. Let's not have it be up to discretion. Let's just say, and it covers this period.
Yes, we absolutely will. That's really good input. Thank you.
I would actually be very nervous from a legal perspective that you would be reliant on discretion to deal with the use of lights in a religious setting.
Yeah, me too.
I think that could be very problematic.
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah, and particularly where you are taking discretion out of Christmas and relying on
Discretion everywhere else.
for the holidays of other religious practices.
That's good feedback.
Not we.
Not wait, yes.
Yes. So we will be, thank goodness, identifying where it is and getting rid of it and making the property owner. I know of 2 spots that it's on the city property and it's creeping into people's farms. It's coming from the ditches, and they put signs up and they sprayed it, but they have not done the real true mitigation. It's been 5 years and it's grown substantially. So I understand that we're going to be monitoring it, but I think that we have to clean up our own backyard before we start dealing with property owners. And it's pretty bad, because once it's in, it's a mess. And controlled substances, rural barns, greenhouses are all going to be covered.
Absolutely,
Great. That's important, especially the remediation.
yes,
Remediation.
remediation of them.
Sadly, I only have 10 minutes. of
Those are your questions? Good, all good. Good, no, that's really good feedback. Anybody else, Susan or anyone else, with some thoughts? It doesn't look like it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So much for the presentation. It's a little bit of a tricky situation because you don't like to impose personally, we want to be careful as a city, what we're imposing on people, but I would agree that these are things that people would like to see cleaned up and it really impacts the presentation of our communities. So yeah, so I guess we'll see where it's going. We'll move along to item 6. So there's no recommendation for that one. So we'll go to 6.2, digital strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Dreesen and committee members. Good morning. I have with me today our Director of Information Technology, Mr. Sean Wells, who's going to provide you with an update on the city's digital strategy and some of the projects that we've completed to date. Sean.
Good morning, committee members and chair. So in 2022, Council adopted the city's digital strategy. And the strategy is really a playbook for the city to deliver modern digital services to our customers, obviously, but also our internal customers, so our staff. And this, of course, aligns with Council's strategic plan. Under Principle 4, everybody here at the city were all tasked with looking at how to deliver better services and modernizing our services, and technology is obviously a underpinning component of that. So I think everybody has had the experience where you're pleasantly surprised when you use technology, where you experience something where it was way easier than you thought it would be. So I put a couple examples here up on the screen. So the first time I used a smartphone and a banking app to deposit a check, at first I didn't know if it was legal, but it was just so easy, right?
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So, before that, what do you have to do? You have to, take your check down to the ATM, and it was a trip, it was a whole thing, right? So, and Amazon, Amazon's too easy to use, right? You can search and order something, at least I can, in 30 seconds, right? So, but these are examples of, what we call delightful experiences that we want to emulate for our customers and our staff. So we see it as our North Star. So when it comes to digital benefits, I think a lot of people already know this, but number one, going digital is all about being efficient, right, and saving money. Secondly, those customers, our citizens, business owners, and developers are using the banking apps, Amazon. They expect those same types of services or quality of service when they interact with the city. And again, I come back to staff. Staff feel the same way. They get frustrated if they have to use paper-based processes, if they don't have modern solutions to do their job. And then finally, there's an economic development component to our digital strategy that I'll touch on in just a little bit. So like I said, this is the big reason for going digital. This is based on a survey that was done by Service Canada. So you can see going digital, and if you do digital right, the cost of providing those services is exponentially cheaper, or by order of magnitude cheaper than providing those same services either over the phone or face-to-face. Now, this doesn't mean that we're going to push everybody to use digital services. We'll meet our customers where they want to meet us. But our goal is to make our services so good that the majority of our customers will choose to use our digital services. So you got this magical thing where you can improve the efficiency, quality, and speed of a service, but reduces cost. And there's countless examples that I could bring up here, but the one I chose is the City of Mississauga. Obviously, development approvals is a hot topic right now. By modernizing their process through digital, they were able to cut down their approval time by half and save $1 million. So good digital services aren't just about technology. So if you have a bad business process, but you throw technology against it, it doesn't really get us to where we want to be. So the digital strategy recommends that when we evaluate opportunities for going digital, we look at the whole business process and that we adopt these 15 principles of good service design. I come out of a book called, appropriately enough, Good Services, that was authored by the Chief Information Officer of the UK. And if you look at them, you know, they make a lot of sense, right? This is a customer view of a service. So as a customer, a service should be easy to find. If you need help, you should be able to get in contact with a human easily. There should be no dead ends, right? So if we design our services with these principles in mind, our services will be that much more friendly. So digital strategy recommended these 5 major work streams, which I'll run through right now. So the first is digital services, and what we mean by this is really our external facing services. So in terms of some key deliverables that the digital strategy outlined was, number 1, setting that digital service standard across all digital services. Another one was to really create a citizen-centric experience on our website. So today, if I want to register my daughter into swim lessons, I go to the city's website and I register for one portal, and okay, that's fine, but what if I want to take a look at my water bill? Well, that's a completely separate system I have to register for, right? So it's system-centric, it's not customer-centric. So that's our vision. It'll take a while to get there because these things aren't easy. We have to build digital capabilities such as online bookings and payments and that kind of thing that all integrate together. Again, that's our vision. The other thing that we're doing is we're building service inventory. So by service inventory, these are all the services that we provide our customers, citizens, builders, developers. And we're looking at a number of factors to prioritize what we should digitize first. So things like the services that get used most frequently or services that have the largest impact on the community. So for an exemplar project for this work stream, a couple of years back, the city received a $500,000 grant from UBCM to modernize our internal services around development applications. So we created a program that we call D3, or Digital Development Delivery. And part of that project, one of the outcomes, was building an online portal for building permit applications. So that's online now. Builders don't have to come into the city. They can submit online. They can submit their drawings online. So that's our first step. There's other permits that are coming on board next, but that was our kickoff for going digital. The second work stream just talks about digital tools for a digital workplace. So this is about providing our employees with the tools they need to be effective, whether they're in the office, out in the field, or working from home. Big focus of this area is leveraging our investment in Microsoft 365 to improve communication and collaboration. Big push to move away from paper. And we're taking a look at our telephone system and see how we can integrate that potentially with Microsoft 365. So a couple of example projects in this area. One is our geo-trait application. So this application is used by city staff to inspect trails, trees, natural areas. So they take iPads out in the field. There's forms where they can record their results. They can take photos. They can augment the photos. If they need to hire contractors to remedy any issues, there's a workflow for that. Previous to this application, this was all paper-based, right? This was like people out in the field with clipboards and paper. So this is a huge efficiency improvement for us. Another project, our accounts payable automation project. There were 2 phases to that. We just launched our first phase, which is around expense management. I think Abbotsford Police will really benefit from this because they have a lot of expenses they have to deal with, like meal expenses, that kind of thing. So before the system was in place, staff or police members had to collect all the receipts, I guess, stuff them in their wallet, come back, fill out the form, do the calculations, get approvals. That's now all handled through an application on the mobile phone. So using the app, you take a photo of the receipt. It uses optical character recognition to determine the value of the expense. Has a little bit of built-in intelligence. So it's like, hey, I see you're at Denny's at 8 a.m. I'm guessing this is a meal expense. So really cuts down the amount of manual work to claim expenses. And of course, once those expenses are submitted, the workflow to approve is automatic. So by automatic, I mean streamed to the appropriate people electronically. This third work stream, digitize core processes, really talks about the applications that we use internally at the city every day to do our business. So we use a product called Amanda for permitting and licensing. We use something called Tempest for utilities and property taxes. We use SAP for our financials. So it's really about leveraging our investments in those core technologies to get the most out of them. I highlighted D3 as an example in this area, again, because before we were able to go live with a permitting portal or mobile building inspections, we had to do a lot of work on the back end to our business process and to simplify, to prepare us to deliver the technology. So I would say at least half the work was done through just remodeling our business process. It wasn't really about technology at all. For our financials, we're just looking at how we can improve self-service and automation. For fire rescue, they're running a records management system that's at least 20 years old, I think. So we're partnering with Ecom to deliver a cloud-based modern solution that'll solve a lot of the current frustrations over at fire rescue. And as another example project, these things kind of tend to happen behind the scenes, but our geographic information system, or GIS, which for people who don't know what GIS is, I guess I could describe it as kind of like Google Maps, but on steroids, right? We needed to upgrade the core technologies. We had some legacy technology there, and it was a heart transplant. It was so complicated. But the team, I'm super proud of the team that actually got it done, and they got it done ahead of schedule. So that really sets us up for the future now to deliver new technologies. Fourth, this work stream really focuses on cybersecurity and connectivity throughout the municipality. So cybersecurity, it's on top of not just IT leaders' minds, but everybody's minds, any leader in an organization. Recently, I think the most recent example of a Canadian municipality that was a victim to cybercrime is the city of Hamilton. So they suffered a ransomware event in February. They're still recovering. They've made a lot of progress, but I read a quote from the city manager basically saying that it'll take up to a year for them to be fully recovered. So for us, a lot of our time is consumed bolstering our cybersecurity, and it's again, it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. It's a bit of an arms race too, because it's cat and mouse, right? In terms of enhancing our connectivity throughout the community, so we continue to expand Wi-Fi, both for city staff and for the public alike. One thing, when we were developing our digital strategy, it surprised me a little bit when we went through stakeholder engagement, is I heard at least 2, maybe 3 people said they lived in areas of Abbotsford that didn't have access to broadband. Yeah, which surprised me, to be honest. So that comes back to that economic development side, right? So one of the things that we said we do is look at the possibility of the city partnering maybe with internet service providers to see if there's anything that we could do to expand the reach of broadband within the community. In terms of projects we just completed, cybersecurity audit, so we hired some white hat hackers. So we'll learn from that experience. And again, just come back to Wi-Fi for staff. Oops. Okay. And the final work stream is around GIS data and analytics. So the goal of this work stream is just to become more data-driven as an organization. Already talked a little bit about GIS and some of the work that we're doing there. We're just kicking off a data and analytics strategy. So that's really about tactics to ensure we get good data into our systems. So that involves things like identifying roles that are responsible in the city for ensuring data quality. But it also touches on once you get your data into the system, how do you get good data out of the system? What tools can we use for that? And that touches on our data literacy program that we want to start up as well. And we want to show the power of analytics. So we wanted to build some dashboards and some other tools out there that, like I said, really demonstrate the power of analytics and extracting information from your data. Some example projects that we recently completed. The first is the CHIA application, or a Community Homelessness Information Application. This is a GIS application that's used by both city staff and other service providers to support those in the community that are experiencing homelessness. And we've been working with our HR department to build some dashboards that give us some insights into the demographic of our workforce. So shortly after we adopted the digital strategy, generative artificial intelligence burst onto the scene. And this chart gives you an idea of how quickly it's been adopted. So what this shows is for each one of these online services, how quickly did it take for each of them to reach 100 million users? So you start with Spotify in 2008, and it took them 11 years. So you move up the scale a little bit, Facebook, 4.5 years, ChatGPT, 2 months. So AI, I think, has tremendous opportunity to impact our service delivery here at the city. Just a couple of areas, of course, around efficiency for how we work. Talking about analytics, the ability just to use natural language to query your data and have a conversation with a chatbot to get meaningful information is super powerful. And enhance citizen to government communication. So chatbots are nothing new. They've been around for a while, so you can go to a couple of municipal websites and they have chatbots. But honestly, I don't think they've been that good, but I think they're going to get a lot better. And we have an example of something that's being built in the city of Amarillo. I think they call it their digital human. So we'll play a short video so you can see what that experience is like.
Hello. Hola. Konnichiwa. I'm Sophie. It is great to meet you. What's your name?
Hi, Sophie. My name is Rich. I'm trying to find out if the city of Amarillo.
Hello, Rich. Nice to meet you. Yes, the city of Amarillo does have a landfill. It is called the Amarillo landfill, and it provides waste disposal services for residents and businesses in the area. While the Amarillo landfill accepts a wide range of waste materials, there are some items that may not be accepted for disposal. These can include hazardous materials such as chemicals, liquids, batteries, and medical waste. It's always best to check with the landfill directly before using the website for chemicals and
See.
Of course. Here's the translation in Spanish. Aunque podemos aprender de la plataforma de la visita,
Such as.
No. We have 6 presentations.
You can pause it here, that's fine. So
Even the moving.
I know, that threw me off too,
good.
right? Yeah.
It's so good,
Yeah.
right? Because usually it's just this static. But anyway, moving on.
There's a little bit of an uncanny valley effect there.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
Yeah. So it shows you what's possible in the future. This is just a start. Like these chatbots, these digital humans are only going to get better from here. So for us here at the city, some challenges when it comes to adopting AI. First of all, this stuff is changing every day, and companies are trying stuff, and some of it will stick and some of it won't. So we're just trying to navigate that field to figure out where the real value could potentially lie for the city of Abbotsford. We got to figure out what skills we need to support AI here at the city. So whether that's internal training or getting that through consulting services. And then I come back to data quality and privacy considerations, right? So AI is no different than any other technology, garbage in, garbage out. So really got to get your data in line. And just around privacy and confidentiality, AI has the ability to surface information that might have been hidden just due to the fact it's hard to get to. So you really got to be on top of ensuring you have the privacy bits locked down. So overall for a digital strategy, our next steps, again, we want to adopt that digital service standard corporate-wide. When we first launched the digital strategy, we completed a IT maturity assessment. So it was a survey that we issued to our stakeholders, and it rated us on a scale from 1 to 5. So it's time to do that again, just to make sure we're making progress. We're going to establish an internal AI working group. So that's going to involve members of IT and our user departments. Again, just identifying those areas we think have the greatest potential impact here at the city, and then determining what we need to support those technologies. And then once we do that, we'll identify some lighthouse AI projects just to demonstrate the value.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I should have mentioned or could have mentioned early on too that this report came from as a request, I think, from a community member, because it was something that this committee before my time had contributed to and inputted to. So this is also just more also informational to give an update to the committee. But is there any questions for Sean? Yes, Alex.
Yeah, I'm actually just curious, about the cost-benefit analysis on the expansion of public Wi-Fi. Perhaps it's not very expensive, or perhaps it's well worth the cost for underprivileged members of society, but just with the expansion of cellular data, the reality that Canada has a largely overpriced currently public data, but I think the expectation should be that it will continue to come down. I mean, I don't need to use Wi-Fi ever.
Right.
Right? It's effectively useless for me because my cellular plan has a minimum of whatever 20 or 30 gigabytes of data. If we expect over the next 5 years that just, if you go to Asia, for example, you get unlimited data for very low price, is it worth it?
Yes, it's a good question, and something we dealt with when we were expanding Wi-Fi out to public facilities. I think it was just seen as an expectation from the community. I think if you go to any hockey arena, Coquitlam, Township of Langley, they all have Wi-Fi that's available, right? So I think that's where we were coming from, that this connectivity should be there because it's expected from our citizens.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would pose the question, is it still as expected?
Right.
5 years ago when Vancouver and them did this, you were getting 5 gigabytes of data for a crazy amount of money, right? Like, it was really important to people. They needed internet connectivity. If we're talking about a future expansion of it, you know, like you said, things are moving so fast. Does it still make sense?
Right, no, it's a good question.
Thanks, yeah. We'll go to Lynn online.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I had a comment and a couple of questions. My Wi-Fi coverage, I'm one of the people that always complained about it, but I live out in the rural areas of Abbotsford, and it actually seems to have been better over the last couple of years. So if that's due to things that you're doing, thank you. That's
Can't take any credit,
Yeah.
sorry.
helping, right?
Of course, 100%.
Take credit for it, right? Thank you. I was concerned about the cybersecurity in this. Your cybersecurity plans include data recovery and recovery from attack, because it seems like, especially cities and public institutions are becoming. It's not becoming a question of if they're going to be attacked for ransomware. It's just a question of when, and so there's a balance there between preventing the attack, which you'd always like to do, but also making sure that you can recover from it. So I guess that's my question is, how confident are you that we have the steps in place to recover from a ransomware attack or somewhere where we're going to, you know, maybe get locked out of our data? Do we have data backups and things like that?
Yeah, through the chair, it's a fantastic question because a cybersecurity posture isn't about, as you say, just about prevention, but it's also taking into account, you know, what are we going to do to recover. So that is part of our cybersecurity program. You know, in terms of backups, we talked to some other municipalities that were attacked, and one of the first ways they knew they were compromised is when they went out to their backups and they were all erased. So we're learning those lessons, right? So we're doing things to ensure that we have redundant and safe backups. Last year we also developed incident response plans that involved our strategic leadership team. So it's essentially a playbook. Okay, what happens in the event of ransomware, right? So absolutely, it's just not about prevention, but it's also about recovery. So Lynn, I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, and I just have one more, and that is, when it was presented a couple of years ago, it was talking about really enhancing the City of Abbotsford website and making it much more, as you say, user focused. How roughly, on a scale of 0 to 100%, how far do you think we are in that? Do we still have major projects that you're doing, or are you sort of in maintenance mode, process improvement, just kind of tweaking things, or that's kind of it?
Yeah, through the chair. There's significant work for us to do. So, you know, it's difficult for me to put a number on it. So I guess I'll play the safe number, say 50%. You know, there's a lot of areas in the website that I think are really good and then provide good service. But, you know, the examples I think that I gave before, just the system-centric approach that we take to delivering online services obviously isn't where we want to be. Some of the work that we're doing with planning and development services, you know, we're just getting started. There's a lot of work for us to do there as well. So there's, I think, many years of work ahead of us to build out an environment where we want to go. And the targets are always moving, right? Technology is always changing. We've adopted a methodology called minimal viable product, and the philosophy behind that is to release the smallest piece of technology that provides value to whoever's using it, and then to iterate on it. Because if we try to work towards perfection before we release them, we'll never get there, right?
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn. Alex, you had a quick question?
Thanks for your presentation. This is really important work. I just wanted to ask, you know, you touched on going to multiple different portals for citizens, businesses. They'll have to go to different parts of sites to log in and things like that. Can you just unpack a little bit more about what might be underway in terms of that integration or trying to find opportunities to have fewer login points along the way for users?
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks for the question. Right now, we're looking at those core technologies to enable that sort of centralized experience. So I come back to one payment system across everything, right? So we have to build those fundamentals, the stuff that our customers don't see, kind of like the foundation of the house, before we can look at providing that experience to our customers. So we're relatively, we're starting that journey. Like I said before, a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Underway, but a priority.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Good. Don, last question to you.
Public access to those dashboards. Are you thinking of providing, you mentioned you're building dashboards for data support. Is there going to be public access? The follow-on to that is in some cities, the Economic Development Department have a dashboard that they can send to a potential company that's moving into town, and they can do their own data sourcing. Will there be something like that they'll be able to use to send out to Coca-Cola who wants to come here and they want to know the demographics, they want to know those kind of things? I think it's really important.
I'm going to turn it over to my colleague here.
I know Bruce has something to say about that. Yeah.
To Mr. Campbell. We do have a service, Abbotsford sitefinder.ca. It has two big buckets. One is available commercial and industrial real estate, and the second, and the one that I'm actually much more excited about, is community information. So it has things like demographic information, business counts. You can look up, different skill sets you may be looking for here. It has a ton of information. Most of it comes from Stats Canada, but it's updated regularly by Environics. So the data on there is quite fresh. So I'd love to sit down with you and show it to you in person.
I just know that some companies who have gone through that have found that it didn't have the kernels of information that some companies are looking for. I just thought, if you're going to be developing all of this data into one portal, that a dashboard could be designed that made access to that. So yes, it was a great progress, but we're here now, so.
Yeah. No, if I could say, just really quickly, you're absolutely right. So as we develop our analytics program, part of that is engaging with the business and learning what customers need. So just like as we're building out our external services list to identify priorities, we'll do the same thing with analytics.
Right. And by the way, your apps, the city apps, the collection and the other one, are excellent. And I'm a big salesman of them, getting people on them. So it's really, really good.
Awesome. Thank you for that feedback. That's great. If there's any other questions too, I think we'll move along, but if there's other things that come up, then you can feel free to send us an email or send staff an email and we'd be happy to answer them too. So I know there's a lot in there. So great, we'll move on to item number 6.4. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, and through the chair to the committee. We'll keep this one brief and tight. I know we have another 4 reports following this one that we need to get through in the next hour. So I'm going to turn it over to Bruce, who's going to give you a flavor of the Fraser Valley Alliance and what it is.
So, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to show you some information about the Fraser Valley Alliance. Let's get through the purpose here. So, give you some context about the Fraser Valley Alliance. So, we started the Fraser Valley Alliance in 2019 with a memorandum of understanding between, there were 5 communities at that time, Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Mission, Maple Ridge, and the Township of Langley. The Township of Langley has subsequently brought that the manager of strategic investment retired, and they closed the department. So they withdrew. We have since taken over the administration at the City of Abbotsford. The purpose of this was to work together to attract foreign direct investment. we wanted to come together as an investment corridor. And part of it is that we wanted to complement what was happening with Metro Vancouver and particularly Invest Vancouver. The MOU has we've outlined steering committee, a strategy, there's secretariat work plans we do here, and a mechanism for funding. So the member communities contribute, and we also use to seek funding from federal government through Canada Export. And we have regular meeting schedules. So this is the presentation that we've used when we've gone out. Actually, people have come to us. So the Alliance now, City of Chilliwack, Abbotsford, Maple Ridge Mission. We're aligning what we're doing, as I said, in foreign direct investment. And we wanted to, again, complement what's happening with Metro Vancouver. This is a map we show, because we're talking to people from outside of the country, just an idea of the size and location of Fraser Valley and Metro Vancouver. Most people seem to know where Richmond is, because that's where they flew into, and Vancouver. One of the first things we did was a readiness analysis, and through that we looked at where our strengths were identified: advanced manufacturing, aerospace, agribusiness and agri-tech, so this is the agricultural component, clean technology, and ICT. We talked to people from outside of Canada. One of the things we want to really emphasize is Fraser Valley is one of the fastest growing and most livable parts of Canada. I know this is not news to people in the room, but it's a regional market of about 3 million people. One of the real strong benefits that Canada has is its network of international free trade agreements with the United States and Mexico, European Union, United Kingdom, the successor agreement, Republic of Korea, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is the Asia Pacific. We talk a lot about the transportation network we have, especially our connections to the US through land borders, and the fact that it's extensive, robust railway, highway, and seaport connectivity here. The Fraser Valley has a younger population. Median age here is just over 40, and a big chunk of our population are in their prime working years, between 20 and 49. So, and over half of the population here has some level of post-secondary education. How we work together, we have, as I said, a cooperation agreement that we review annually. Pay-to-play model. We each kick in, typically it's about $5,000 a year, and we leverage that funding to go after federal funding from Canada Export. Typically meet 6 to 8 times a year. We have an annual work plan that we've developed. We'll be meeting in May to do that. We work closely with my favorite ministry in the province, JEDI. It's the Jobs, Economic Development, and Innovation Ministry. They sit on there as an ex officio member to advise us, and really about developing and strengthening the trade agency and stakeholder relationships. One of the keys is working for us has been working with JEDI and the BC Trade and Investment reps, particularly the in-market reps. We have, I think, 16 or 18 of them now that are around the world. Looking at broadening our participation with academic institutions, investor networks, sectoral, and First Nations. We've hosted some tours. One of the first ones was with the Finnish Trade and Investment Agency. They were very interested The economy is very similar to BC's. Delegation that came from the Netherlands. This was particularly in ag tech. A delegation that came from Denmark. This was a clean tech. And then the most recent one was from the city of Rzeszów. It's a city of about 300,000 in southeast Poland. It is where all of the Western aid to Ukraine funnels through. They have a large aviation and innovation corridor there. Really, really interesting. We've been working together on a number of regional initiatives, particularly around workforce, the entrepreneurial investor ecosystem, business continuity and emergency preparedness. We did a small program with the city of Chilliwack and provincial government around, part of it was around disaster preparedness, and then a couple months later it was on, it was an evaluation of the new recovery program that they were developing at the provincial level. So it was a great partnership with Chilliwack that came through the Fraser Valley Alliance. Some of the things that we've done, I mentioned, we started off with, trying to identify what our strengths were, those 5 sectors. Some readiness analysis. Were we ready to go after FDI in those areas? And then it's been about developing marketing tools in the last little while. So there's a website I'll show you in a bit, some videos, some dashboards of information, and some traction tools that we're looking to develop as well. She'll be good.
Looks an awful lot like that.
So if we keep scrolling down, there's a video here, it's a longer one. We'll keep scrolling down, so you go a little bit further. Can you click on the Abbotsford? You scroll down. I just wanted to show you this video here. This is one of the things that we developed.
Marshall Aerospace opened operations at the Abbotsford International Airport in 2006.
So I invite you to just have a look at the website there, investforfraservalley.ca. My last slide here are questions.
Questions? All right. Questions or comments? See, we'll go to Lynn. Go ahead, Lynn.
Sorry,
No,
talking a
good.
lot today. I was just wondering, in your presentation, I see what you've accomplished in your purpose, but do you have sort of the next steps, like the next 2 or 3 things that are on your horizon that you're looking to accomplish?
Through the chair, to Ms. Atchison. Yeah, we're looking to meet in May. We do an annual work plan. What we are hoping, I think, and what I would be advocating there is that we continue to build out the marketing tools. As I said, most of this is inbound. So these are people coming to Canada who are looking to invest here. We have a really good partnership right now with BC Trade and Investment team. And it's really about continuing to work with them to provide them with the information. The Trade and Invest rep, for example, that's based in Europe, has provided us with a number of these groups. We've also had some interest from aerospace companies in South America that have come through Fraser Valley Alliance. So we really want to continue to build out that partnership with the province, but also with our partners.
Did you hear that, Lynn? Yeah. Okay. Alex, go ahead.
Actually, just a comment, and you may do this already, but I would just suggest partnerships with large law firms in downtown. Law firms in Abbotsford don't deal with public companies. Those law firms will have connections to the types of markets and obviously understand how to set up the structures. And again, you may have these connections already, but most foreign investment will run through those law firms, and so probably that could be a relationship that's leveraged.
Through the chair, I think that we would definitely take that advice to heart, and we'd work with some of the partners that we have at the province.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Alex.
You had talked about kind of the Metro Vancouver example and everything as being a part of some inspiration for some of this. So I'm curious, with Invest Vancouver now doing the municipal economic development function, like is that part of the thinking in terms of where you're planning to go with this, or is this really meant to be focused on workforce development, the entrepreneurship, and then the emergency preparedness piece?
Through the chair to Ms. Mitchell. We were inspired by what was happening with Invest Vancouver. We wanted to, sort of piggyback and complement what they were doing. There isn't an idea of merging economic development functions at all, but to work together where it makes sense. We looked at these 5 sectors that we all have some strength in. Some of us have more. I would say aerospace is really ours. And to a large degree, advanced manufacturing is also ours. But there's ways that we can work together. So it's more of a collaborative, cooperative model than an integrated.
I love it. I have one more follow-up question. But just on that, I think the collaborative work is really, really important. It's our chambers work together on, on a business coalition standpoint. So anytime that you can, amplify the conversation about the regional issues, it's really powerful. Can you talk a little bit more about what's happening around regional initiatives for the investor ecosystem? Like what work is underway, or what work might you want to be underway? Just kind of curious about that.
Through the chair again. That I think is one of the things that we're really going to have to nail down in May. The initial pieces, when we first got going, it was who are we, what are our strengths? The second was marketing. And now this next one is, what is it we were trying to build, that ecosystem that we're trying to build? And I think that, where it could land is even higher levels of collaboration. Within the city, I think that probably the best example it's the economic development table. I would say that what happens at the table is almost as important as what happens after the table's over. We have all of these sort of sidebar conversations. There's just an incredible amount of collaboration and information sharing that happens, sort of right after the meeting ends. So that's the kind of thing I think, we could benefit from on a broader scope.
Yeah, so more opportunities to broaden out
opportunities.
who's involved and what that
Yeah.
would go. Okay, cool.
Information sharing.
Information sharing.
Yeah. Okay. John, did you have a question? You're good?
Weirdly.
Pardon?
Weirdly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, oddly. Great. Okay, thank you for sharing. That was really good, Bruce. We're gonna keep moving along or go back, I guess, now to 6.3, which is an official community plan update from Ryan. Heather? Yeah, go ahead. Heather?
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Heather Cower. I'm the Director of Community Planning. And I'm going to present on the official community plan update. We're going to introduce the process a little bit, and then we're going to do a little bit of highlighting of the background research report, which is the big document that we've already developed and presented to council that kind of explains the process and what we've found so far. So we'll kind of go through these steps, and we'll start with this kind of idea, why update the OCP? Generally, you're looking at population growth and amending it based on a certain period of time of population growth and development. In our particular case, we also had council come in and they did a strategic plan that identified the OCP as needing an update. And when we started that, we thought it was going to be relatively minor, kind of a tweak. But then the province came out with some legislation around housing, and we realized that it was no longer going to be just a tweak. So part of that legislation also gave us a deadline. So we will have to update the OCP by the end of 2025 and integrate all that housing legislation. And in the meantime, in the shorter period, by June 30th of this year, we are mandated to update our zoning bylaw to allow up to 4 units on lots that previously could only have single family house. And we'll be talking about that later on in another presentation in more detail, but in the short term, while we're doing some OCP work, we're also working on this and trying to meet this deadline. Once we have the bylaw, the OCP updated by the end of 2025, we will anticipate that we'll actually have to be updating it every 5 years, also as a response to that legislation. And it will kind of look like this. Our OCP has to be informed by our housing needs report, and there's certain timelines around our housing needs report. So it'll just kind of look like this as a 5-year cycle, starting after 2028. I also like to just very simply, there's kind of 3 main parts of the OCP that will likely get updated in some ways. And those are policies, the development permit guidelines, and the maps. And those end up being the deliverables kind of an OCP project. What will also happen likely is that we'll have some zoning bylaw amendment recommendations that come out of the OCP update. And this kind of gives you a purpose. What is the purpose of an OCP? It is setting the overarching vision for the city. It is a land use document, so it's not any and all things, although we can contain other kinds of visions in it that aren't strictly land use. This kind of gives you the legislative framework around that. An OCP is a document that is governed by the Local Government Act. So it's enabled by the Local Government Act. And the content of an OCP, there are must contents and there's may content. So we must have certain things, we may have other things. The legislation also mandates that it be consistent with the regional growth strategy, which is being updated at the Fraser Valley Regional District at the moment. And the OCP also has to be informed by our housing needs report. This kind of illustrates that council has given us direction to move forward with that OCP update. And once we do, it informs all the other plans and strategies that we adopt and work on. But it's sort of a cyclical thing where we do the OCP, the master plans and the strategies have to be consistent with it. And as we kind of circle back around now, we're going to look at those master plans and the strategies and make sure that they all kind of work together. This gives you an example of the types of policies that happen at the OCP level versus the master plan versus the strategy level. OCP policies tend to be somewhat high level, as in this example with the urban forest and tree canopy. We're going to have a policy like expand and strengthen a healthy and diverse tree canopy. But the master plan gets into a little more detail and more specificity, and then it's at the urban forest strategy where we say we want a 40%, we identify a target of a 40% canopy cover. And then implementation are the bylaws that actually on the ground govern what actually gets built or not. So that kind of gives you an idea of how those work together. All right, so process. In January of this year, we launched the OCP project by presenting the background research report to council and giving them our recommendation for an engagement strategy and that they endorsed. We are now in stage 2 of our process where we're going to be doing public engagement, and it'll be the month of May is going to be pretty heavy with engagement. We've got several open houses planned, and part of our pitch to you is that on May 22nd, we will be having a World Cafe, and we hope that 1 or 2 of the committee members would be willing to come to that. But there are open houses for the rest of the community, and we'll be advertising those on our Let's Talk page. We have a Let's Talk page now, but all of those will be advertised as of May 1st. Once we have that engagement, at the end of stage 2, we would take all of the engagement materials that we received, all the comments, and take them to council in the form of a report. And at that point, be making recommendations to council about directions that we think the OCP should take. So that's kind of phase 2. Stage 3 will be council's direction to prepare a new policy and staff will be working on kind of the highlights of the policy. Stage 4 is where we actually have a public hearing and adopt a bylaw. This slide speaks to branding. In 2016, we had a major OCP update and really kind of a rewriting of the OCP, and there was a major branding effort. We're kind of taking that branding and moving it forward in a bit. But one of the distinctions is that in 2016, we were looking at trying to work towards a population of 200,000. And now we're just looking at a time horizon. So 2050 is our goal, and that aligns with the regional growth strategy as well. All right, so we're gonna just get into the background research report to give you some highlights of this. Hopefully it's an encouragement to kind of look through it and find the spots that are most interesting to you. We start out with an introduction of what an official community plan is and why you should care. Abbotsford today gives you some of our updated census information and context in the community, population, demographics, housing, those kinds of statistics. The progress report talks about goals that we set in the 2016 OCP and how we've done on those goals. for the most part, for instance, we set goals of the kinds of housing we'd like to see and where we'd like to see it, and we've done pretty well on that. The fourth chapter of the background research report talks about existing plans and strategies, as we were talking about, master plans. And number 5 is acknowledging local Indigenous peoples. Number 6 is also an acknowledgement of the major challenges that we recognize, housing being, of course, a key one. And we tried to summarize the legislation that we had so far when we drafted this. We're getting more, but we do try to summarize it here and talk about how we're going to try to respond to it. And then, of course, climate change, we recognize is also a challenge that we'll need to speak to in this update. Chapter 7 is our engagement strategy, all the agencies and First Nations that we'll be working with, and how we'll do that. Our open house is being part of that. Let's talk. And then chapter 8 is really some things that we have identified already that we know we'll probably have to speak to in this update. So, and the way that we've arranged it is that we've identified something specific that we want to address. We've provided some rationale, and the icons that we've used will sort of clue you into where it came from. We have kind of the OCP, we have the strategic plan, and then we have some other things going on like legislation, or in this particular case, it's federal funding that we got through the Housing Accelerator Fund. And then we speak to some of those initiatives that we committed to through the Housing Accelerator Fund and where they fit into the OCP process. And there you go. And then we'll talk about next steps, which is where we're at now, stage 2. So this is our timeline around stage 2. We're hoping in the fall to go to council with our engagement and new directions. And again, May 1st, we'll have all of the events. This is up now. Let's Talk is up now, but May 1st will be when all of the engagement events will be advertised. And glad to answer any questions.
All right, questions, go ahead, Don.
Super easy. The May 22nd that you're requesting that some of us show up, do you have a time and location yet?
I don't off the top of my head. No. But we'll be sending out invites through the chair.
We'll get it to you ASAP.
There you go.
As everything just fills up in
Yes.
this world.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other questions or comments? Big job. Not online? Okay. Nope. All right, then I guess we'll move along. Yeah, it's a big undertaking. Just another thing, because our planning department doesn't have much else to do.
The next item is the 2023 annual report, and looking to you for your direction, Chair. We do have 2 other items that we really want input on. So you do have the report in your agenda, so maybe we'll skip the presentation and just open up for any questions or comments that people they may have. Otherwise, I really want to make sure we got time for the next 2 items.
Yeah, I would agree. Any questions on the planning report that was in there? It was a lot of good things.
Very good.
Yeah, so if there is any other questions after the meeting, you're more than welcome to send them via email, or we can also discuss it.
Where do we send them to?
Good question. You can send them to me and I can pass them along to staff. That's fine. I would love to see what the questions are, so that's the process. Yeah, go for it. Do we need to take it off? No, we don't need to take it off the agenda. No. Okay, we'll just go along to item 6.5 or 6.6.
Yeah, the next one is item 6.6. Just quickly as an introduction, this is a secondary suite incentive program through our Housing Accelerator Fund application. We're looking at incentivizing secondary suites. So our planner Gavin Limas has been working on this program, and today we're going to introduce it to the committee and look for some input on this draft program. So turn over to Gavin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, and good morning, committee members. So yeah, they're presenting on a draft secondary suite incentive program for the city that we've been working on. This is mainly in response to not only provincial legislation, but a federal funding grant that council committed to. So again, the purpose of this is just to present the program to the committee for feedback, the draft program. We'll start with kind of a brief context about the current regulations around secondary suites and that Housing Accelerator Fund commitment that council has made. Those are really the impetus for this program. And then we'll move into discussing the program goals and some of the program details of the draft program. And before moving into next steps and our recommendation for the committee's consideration. So just briefly, right now in Abbotsford, we permit secondary suites in around 80% of our single detached properties. There are some zones that prevent secondary suites in some properties and some zoning bylaw conditions and land use contracts that also prevent them. But by June 30, except in some very limited scenarios, due to provincial legislation, the city must permit secondary suites on all single detached properties. Of course, all of that is still subject to the building code, so building permits are required. We review building permit applications for life safety and building code compliance. A key component of the building code that is not changing, it's in effect, is that you can't have more than one secondary suite in a single detached dwelling. And then right now in the city, we also require that suites be registered. We also have a $260 annual infrastructure fee that's levied for properties that have a suite. And through this incentive program, we're not anticipating any changes to that. For further background, so the Housing Accelerator Fund is a $25.6 million federal grant that the city was successful in obtaining from the federal government on the basis of council committing to 7 initiatives that were meant to increase housing supply. One of these is a commitment to expand permissions and legalize unauthorized secondary suites. And that's what we're here talking about today. Through the Housing Accelerator Fund, we've committed to some kind of program that permits 73 additional secondary suites over 3 years. The federal grant, the Housing Accelerator Fund, provides $32,000, up to $32,000 per additional suite that we permit. We're hoping to create the program by June 30th, 2024. And the program would run 3 years or until those 73 suites that we've permitted or that we've committed to are permitted at minimum. I will add that this $25.6 million grant is something the city must spend within 3 years, all of that money. So this is something we're thinking we could probably spend some of that on. So as far as the program goes, our goals really following from this commitment are to legalize unauthorized suites and incentivize new suite additions, but also to ensure that suites are registered and safe for occupancy. Our approach to sort of achieving these goals is to make permitting as attractive, fast, simple, and transparent as possible. That said, while we're trying to make it as easy as possible to put in a new secondary suite, we really don't want to compromise at all on life safety compliance and those critical elements of the building code that are there to ensure life safety for new suites and new construction. To incentivize secondary suites, we're hoping to use a combination of financial and regulatory incentives, so making it easier to get a secondary suite permit, but also providing a bit of financial incentive to incentivize people to come forward to legalize suites or put new suites in that might not otherwise have been incentivized to do so. And that's something we're hoping to use some of that Housing Accelerator Fund money for, and that's something that CMHC and the federal government it's one of the main reasons that they have this program. Things like that. So we've kind of put together just the general framework of the program. We're really focusing on trying to streamline our permit process. So a key element of that we're planning to do is to introduce a life safety checklist through the building permit process that applicants can fill out instead of having to submit drawings and plans. That safety checklist would have the critical safety components that our building inspectors look for. It would tell you upfront what those are, and you could certify that you've either met them in your suite or that you will meet them through the construction process. We look at waiving fees as well through that process. We would still conduct inspections once we issue your permit, to ensure that you are implementing those life safety components. The financial component, the financial incentive would be a $10,000 grant that applicants would receive after they receive occupancy for their suite. So after you complete your suite and it meets life safety compliance and you receive your occupancy permit, you'd be eligible for receiving that $10,000 financial incentive grant. That grant is anticipated to expire. We don't anticipate to offer that forever, but we do think that some of these streamlined permit elements that we introduce can be something that's continued in perpetuity or as long as council is comfortable with it. So just really quickly to kind of compare our current process and what the draft program might look like. If you come in today for a secondary suite, you need to have your application, 2 sets of drawings, you pay a $100 application fee. With the draft program, you'd submit just that life safety checklist with your application in lieu of drawings. For file review, if you're completing the checklist and you're able to certify that those requirements are met or will be met through the process, we can issue your building permit right there over the counter, as opposed to having to review it for a number of weeks and go back and forth potentially. Once you submit that checklist, we can issue that permit. We would still, then you would continue to call for inspections as per usual. And we check to make sure that those life safety requirements are being implemented through the construction process. We'd still do a final inspection. And then once you receive occupancy, you can collect that $10,000 financial incentive grant from the Housing Accelerator Fund. Just to conclude, we think that this program offers a financial and a regulatory incentive to permit secondary suites. It makes it not only easier to get a secondary suite, but also offers that financial incentive. It certainly satisfies Council's Housing Accelerator Fund commitments. We offer transparent building code and permit requirements. This will reduce processing times, all while still ensuring that critical life safety compliance what the building code is designed to achieve. So as far as next steps go, we're continuing to present the draft program to council committees this month. So we have a presentation this afternoon as well to DTAC. In June 2024, we hope to present the program to council for sort of final consideration and endorsement, and the program would run at least through July 2024 to 2027. And we do have an ask, which is that the committee recommend council support this direction of the program. Otherwise, happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone want to make the motion? Alex?
No, I have a question.
We go to questions before the.
Usually we would put it on the table first and then do questions after. If someone would like to make the motion, or if not, then we can go to questions.
I'd like to clarify.
Okay, we'll do questions. Go ahead, Alex.
Sorry, just 2 questions. One is, and I'm not going to pretend to completely understand whether or not this is feasible, but why do city staff need to check a checklist? Can that not be automated to speed up the process? People are just filling out a checklist. We all know that staff are a bottleneck in any industry, and especially in obtaining permits.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We do actually have the online building permit process, so it is certainly possible this could be integrated into that. That may not require staff to check it. The idea was if you were coming up to the counter with your paper application, you could also check it there as well.
Oh, I see.
It really is just an at the counter kind of touch point.
And then my other question was, and again, this may be related to the way the funding works or contracts with the federal government, et cetera, but if people need to make changes to their house right now to put a suite in, people can't borrow money to do that. Costs of their mortgages are putting people under, foreclosure is becoming rampant. Why do they need to wait until they're done to get the $10,000 when that likely would be a barrier to entry for a lot of people who are really struggling right now just to keep their house the way it is, who might say, oh my gosh, this is my saving grace to put a tenant in here, but no one's going to loan me the money that I need because I don't have access to excess credit right now. If this is supposed to start in the summer of 2024, hopefully we get an interest rate cut, but it's not going to be by enough for people to access extra credit. It might just be a brief relief.
Yeah, through the chair, that is a great question. It is something we are sensitive to and have thought about. Ultimately, the program is intended to get new units issued occupancy permits. And so as part of that, we wanted to tie the funding to having those completed units could be something that we take into consideration certainly, but that is kind of what we've currently thought about.
Can I just add too that the province actually has a program that is a forgivable loan program, and you can apply for that and have that upfront to construct. So this is intended to be kind of on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that forgivable loan is up to $40,000?
Up to $40,000, right?
As well, so.
Which is, sorry to jump in, but
Yeah.
it's such an important part that none of us know. And I'm in the industry, so maybe the tie-in that our team here at City of Abbotsford also reminds them and sends them a link. Hey, by the way, there's free money if you're gonna do this, plus you get 10 grand. Because it's so critical right now. People can't find anywhere to live. But I do have questions as well, but that's an excellent question.
Did you have another question? It's just that one? Okay, go ahead, Don.
If there's 260 applications come in, which there will be, and we have 73, are we limiting it to 73 under this program? Or do we, so thank goodness we're gonna solve the problem this way. What's our program?
Yeah, through the chair, that's a great question as well. It's something we'll certainly monitor to see what the uptake is. We did have to, when we were applying for the Housing Accelerator Fund, we did make projections as to how many additional units we think we would generate, and that 73 is kind of what we expect. So if there is more, we'll certainly monitor that, and we can adjust the funding as needed to a point. We probably have to go to council to inform them of that, but it is something we'll definitely monitor. But that 73 number is kind of what we are expecting right now.
You've done your homework, I haven't. But I'm thinking,
That's a very good
I'm thinking it's a
question.
really freaking low number.
It's a very good question. I have the same one. Yes, go ahead.
Mr.
I
Neal,
hope we have that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought we'd have that problem too.
I think you will.
The way we're really designing this is it's 3 years for the 73. When we get to 73, if we're hugely successful, we'll go back to council and report back, say, we got 73 already. Do you want to carry on? Do you want to continue? And that'll be a council decision to be made at that point, I suspect. We'll probably be in favor of that. But
Yeah.
I hope you're right, that we get 260. But
Well, if we get the word out.
So-
Is this, so to ask you or ask you? I'm trying to figure out, so is this 73 some that are already existing and they finally we're bringing them out of the dark? Or is it 73 new ones only that are gonna get this program?
Yeah, through the chair, it's a mix. Yeah, so it would be some that are currently unauthorized suites that would be coming up to code through this permit incentive process, but it would also incentivize people who maybe have a basement suite that they want to convert and add a suite to. It would let them do that. So it's both.
So in essence, could be 22 new units and 51 people just putting them up, so we're not really gaining a lot. Okay, it's just I'm just trying to say how I'm going to tell everybody what the reality is. I love the program. I think it's awesome. I think it's really, really, really needed. I think that it's structured well and the speed of. You're going to set a new bar for the rest of planning and building permits, by the way. It's like if I walk up and then you hand me a building permit, I'm going to FYI. Yeah.
Does that, you're speaking in favor of the recommendation?
100%. I move to recommend it.
Okay. Is there someone who would like to second it?
Can I just ask one more?
I'll just get, I see Lynn seconded it, and then, yeah, we'll go, is there any other questions before going back to Alex, who is someone who hasn't spoken yet? No? Okay, good, then go ahead, Alex, yeah.
Sorry, just my
Yeah, of
only
course.
worry is like if there's effective communication of provincial funding with mortgage rates being as high as they are, I think it should be expected that a lot of people will apply for this. And it very much worries me how much of your 3 years does it take for you to have to come back to council to get further approval? Why is that? Why? What's the point of limiting to 73? Why not get an upfront authorization to do a lot more? Especially when you're in the concept of building suites and permitting, 3 years is a very short amount of time.
Yeah, sure. Again, it was the 73 came out of our forecast work that we had done for our Housing Accelerator Fund application. So 73 is in our application to the federal government. That's what programs work. The council still has that discretion. As we're nearing 73, we'll bring that, we'll report back to council and see if they want to continue the program or not. So that's really, it was just trying to tie the program to what was in the application to the federal government.
Can I answer your question? Yeah, I think it's a great incentive, a great program. My mind went very optimistic as well. I was thinking that we're gonna be overwhelmed. I get the sense from staff that I'm maybe too more optimistic than they are, so, but it would be great to have them. And to your question about the funding, I'm sure you'll take that into consideration along with the other committee feedback. I get a little worried about governments giving money out earlier on, but maybe there's some middle ground there. So I appreciate your feedback on that. But
Yeah, it sounds like the provincial grant.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was just announced, I think, like in April earlier this month. So that's something new, which is possibly why you might not have heard it as well. So
Spread the word.
great. We are going to try to get to the end of this. So I think there's no other questions. I'll call the question. All in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? No. Great. Motion passes unanimously, and we'll move on to 6.7.
Thank you.
Did you make the motion?
I did.
Oh, okay. But who actually made the motion?
I was facing that way, so I was not projecting.
Thanks for making sure, though. Wouldn't be the first time that happened.
We all get phone calls later.
All right.
Okay, thanks everyone. So in the interest of time, I'll move fairly quickly through this, but obviously, if I go too fast, let me know, and obviously happy to answer questions. So the purpose of the presentation today is to provide an update and gather feedback on both small-scale multi-unit housing, so that's the requirement the city now has to enable 4 units on lots within the urban development boundary. And then we'll also touch on transit-oriented areas, which is a parallel piece of legislation. So the outline for today, we'll start with small-scale multi-unit housing, we'll get into transit-oriented areas, and then we'll discuss next steps and conclude with the recommendation. So small-scale multi-unit housing, basically what's required of us is that by June 30th, 2024, the city must permit at least 1 accessory unit on all lots zoned for single detached dwellings. And this is citywide, whether in or outside of the UDB. And so the biggest impact for us is these roughly 250 existing lots. They currently have zoning that does not allow a secondary suite. So there's a bit of an impact there. However, much bigger impact is within the urban development boundary, where we're now required to enable at least a suite in all lots zoned for single detached, but also up to 4 units on all lots zoned for single detached or duplex dwellings. And here the impact is much more significant at nearly 22,000 lots. And importantly, the city must not exercise its zoning or development powers to unreasonably restrict the required use and density. So to support local government in implementing these new housing requirements, the province provided this provincial policy manual and site standards document. And so these are recommended zoning bylaw regulations that we are obligated to consider when implementing small-scale multi-unit housing. However, we're not obligated to adopt them, but we do need to provide a rationale should we deviate from those recommendations. So in essence, on one hand, we have the what, that's the 4 units, the requirement to enable 4 units on every lot, so that's non-negotiable. However, it's the how that we're here to discuss today, and this is where the province has provided guidelines that are recommended. The city retains some discretion as to how to best implement within the context of Abbotsford. So the presentation is broken down by topic, so we'll get into each of these 5 topics as we go forward. And there's a number of directions we could go for each, and ultimately it comes down to our priorities. So do we prioritize housing at all costs? Are we more concerned with trees and space on a lot for drainage? Is parking the number 1 concern? Or as you'll see through the presentation, staff's recommendation is to sort of proceed with a balanced approach. And so kind of the options highlighted there are those that staff are pursuing at this time. So we'll start with the first topic. And so staff are suggesting that we limit small-scale multi-unit housing to predominantly attached housing initially. So this basically means that if an applicant wishes to have 4 units on a lot, all of those units would need to be located within 1 building. building. So this is consistent with existing zoning on the vast majority, or roughly 87% of SMU eligible lots, and kind of represents our overall approach, which is to just kind of take a first incremental step. In terms of the zoning regulations themselves, so by that I mean things like setbacks, building height, lot coverage, and density. We're suggesting that development be subject to existing zoning regulations. So the graphic on the left, you can sort of see a typical house that's permitted within our existing zoning rules, and then sort of overlaid atop that is the sort of provincial regulations in the box that they're sort of suggesting we work within. So you can see the box is quite a bit more permissive and would really create a totally different sort of type of housing that we currently see in many of our established neighborhoods. So as a first step, we're proposing to proceed with sort of our existing zoning regulations and ensure that this new housing type kind of looks and feels a lot like existing housing to start out.
So we have that option, sorry for the quick question. We have that option to choose versus the provincial legislation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
All right, sorry. So are other cities pursuing the same approach that you would require 4 units to be in the single dwelling? Because my worry with that would be an unreasonable use of bylaw permitting to prevent basically the law being carried out, because it's not really feasible to put 4 separate dwellings in the current typical Abbotsford BC box home.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. The only ones we know for sure are those that have brought bylaws forward. There's a couple of them in the province. They're more so kind of located in Metro Vancouver, where the context is quite a bit different. And anecdotally, through our conversations with kind of more comparable communities, our approach is pretty consistent with how others are doing it. And yeah, it will be difficult, I suppose, to accommodate 4 units, but really the requirement is that we enable the 4 units. And certainly, what the degree to which they're viable or not, we'll kind of learn as the process goes on. But, in theory, you could have 4 small units. You could have a sort of a larger principal unit with a variety of smaller units within that house. So.
Wow.
Okay.
Keep going.
Sure. In terms of parking, so staff are suggesting that we require a minimum of 1.5 parking stalls per dwelling unit. This is the same rate that is applied to a 2+ bedroom apartment in Abbotsford. And our analysis suggests that a typical SMU, so to the committee member's point from a moment ago, these would, in this context, would be rather small units. And so we're envisioning applying a parking rate that kind of reflects the size of the unit. And then in terms of lot size, so the vast majority of eligible lots for this new type of housing are currently permitted a minimum subdivision size of 540 square meters. However, we do have existing zones in the zoning bylaw that allow subdivision down to smaller, compact lots. And staff are recommending initially that we kind of amend those other zones to increase the minimum lot size to ensure that the lot is a sufficient size to accommodate the type of housing that we're now sort of forced to contemplate here. And then lastly, for housing tenure, staff are recommending that initially we proceed by requiring these units to be non-stratified dwelling units, meaning you could have sort of one owner that owns all 4 housing units, perhaps lives in one of them and rents 3 of them out. And the logic here is largely around simplifying future redevelopment and land assembly. So you can imagine there's parts of the city where the OCP envisions higher density, and now the province has introduced this option for landowners. And so it's much more difficult for a developer to sort of not have to knock on 4 doors for every lot rather than 1 when they're looking to put some land together to do a bigger project that is in line with the vision. So that sort of collection of approaches is our recommended direction at this time. And then we'll touch very briefly on transit-oriented areas. So this is a parallel piece of legislation that the province introduced. So this is basically, they've identified 104 transit stations across the province and then set minimum required heights and densities that the city must not prohibit. And so here in Abbotsford, we have one so far, so that's the Borkwin Bus Exchange identified in purple there. The province has actually given us coordinates, which we placed in a map in GIS, which you heard about earlier, and then kind of identify the impacted properties. So everything identified in blue there will have to, that's within 200 meters and is now required to enable up to a building that is up to 3.5 times the size of the property and up to 10 stories in height. And then everything in red is required to accommodate up to 6-story apartment building. And importantly, within that area, the province has removed the city's ability to require a minimum parking requirement. So that basically means that if a developer wants to do a project in there, they get the discretion to decide how much parking is required for based on their marketing and their project needs. So in terms of what we have to do, I guess by June 30th, it's really that we have to bring a bylaw forward designating that area as a transit-oriented area, and then we'll have to amend our zoning bylaw to address that parking piece as well. So in terms of next steps, we'll be sort of refining our zoning approach. We're embarking on our engagement process, so we have a meeting with the Urban Development Institute. It's actually in May, my apologies. We're undertaking public engagement. That's actually launching right away and will run sort of throughout the first part of May. So we'll have a Let's Talk page. That's just getting ready to launch, and then I will hopefully circulate that link to the committee. And then we'll be preparing bylaws, proceeding through council, all in the interest of hitting that June 30th deadline. So the recommendation today is that the committee recommend that council support our initial direction. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Or if someone wants to move the recommendation, what would the committee like to do?
I'll move there.
Okay, moved by Alex P, seconded by anyone? Alex M. Sorry, I saw her first, Susan. Questions or comments? There's a lot of information in there.
My head's hurting.
Mine too.
Go ahead, Lynn. I see your hand up first.
Yeah, so just clarity in my mind. You're just saying we can't be restricted to disallow that kind of thing. It's not that every home is going to be turned into these multi-unit lots, right? It's just if the person wants to.
That's right. Yeah, thanks through the chair. That's great clarity. Yeah, so and I guess kind of adjacent to that, we're also not saying that you can't build a single detached house. Or sorry, the province isn't saying that you can't build a single detached house in the future. It's just that zoning bylaws need to be updated to enable more. So if somebody wants to build a detached house on their lot or a new lot in the future, they can continue to do that. It's just that the zoning bylaws can't be the tool that limits the amount of housing.
And is that the same for the lot size? So I'm sorry, I kind of missed what you were saying about the lot size increasing the to 540. Does that mean that current lots that are under that size have to be resized in the future if they sell, or are you just saying new lots that are created want to have that 540 square meter?
Yeah, through the chair. So that's the zoning bylaw has minimum subdivision regulations, and that guides future subdivisions. So anybody that has a 300 square meter lot today doesn't have to buy a portion of their neighbor's lot to align with the zoning bylaw in the future.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Don.
I will limit them. I have 7 pages of questions.
Yes.
I'm going to limit them. I'm sorry, because this is really, really impactful, which is not a word. So the difference between a 4-unit zoning bylaw and the basement suite bylaw, is it, so under the basement suite bylaw, I can get approval for the one, just adding a suite, but for the 4 zoning, I can't put 3 suites in an existing house, I wouldn't think. That's not even a question, is it?
I think there's a
Sorry, I
question.
should phrase it as a question.
Yeah, through the
Can
chair. technically secondary suite is limited to one per dwelling unit.
That's what I mean, but can we limit it
But
now?
this is a new housing use. So it would be, small scale multi-unit housing would be, 3 or 4 dwelling units on a lot. It would no longer be sort of as defined by the zoning bylaw. It would no longer necessarily be a secondary suite. We're into kind of a new housing typology.
So a follow-up question to that is, can I then convert and then come up to the counter and say, I'm adding 3 suites to this existing home, now that the zoning says 4. I know it's noon, but this is really important.
Yeah. See Mark standing up.
Yeah, Dave Oswald, the public. So you're really getting into building code implications, Don, to that question. So as Cyril mentioned, in a single detached home, you can have a suite.
Yeah.
You can't have more than 1 suite. It's now a unit. And that gets you, that you're now a multifamily building, which puts you into different components of the building code. Okay, so now you're into similar requirements for a townhouse or apartment with building code implications. So they aren't called suites after you've added that first one. Your second and third are now dwelling units, and that puts you in a different category of the building code.
Perfect, because that was my next question, was about this. You can't strata. Well, I should hope not, unless you have to build 2 condominiums, like okay, that's good. Not a question, moving on. And somebody addressed the no laneway housing issue and done. I will send some more questions.
Sure.
The strata, sorry, your strata comment was in support of the preventing strata. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that it's brilliant that you're putting that in. Because it just turned into a real show, excuse my language. But the building code difference was what I was really worried about. It's like people just converting their current home into 4 suites without the party wall and without the fire suppression, et cetera. So that was, I see a crossover and a confusion that's gonna happen in the market between the suite conversation and this conversation with the new zoning. But there's no question for that. It's just, God help you all.
I guess just as a comment, even when we first started kind of pilfering through the legislation, the fact that it said you have to allow 1 secondary suite in every single detached lot, and you have to allow 4 units. Initially, we were.
Have you done math before? Yeah.
Not redundant.
There is the one follow-up of the lot size thing, and so if somebody is now building a subdivision, they're 2/3 of the way through it. And with all the infrastructure starting to be planned, et cetera, now all the lots have to be 530 from now on. So I'm now able to put fewer lots, therefore fewer housing units.
Well, through the chair, so I guess two answers.
Okay.
One being that we would obviously, look to protect certainly in-stream applications and also provide a bit of a grace period for those applicants that have been doing a lot of work already with a certain vision in mind.
Yeah.
So make sure that those are protected. And then generally, if somebody's not in the door and it's a year from now, they're looking to do a subdivision, it is larger lots, which means fewer but more housing potential, the potential for more housing units on every lot. So there's a bit of a push and pull.
I'm glad I'm not in the front counter. Okay.
I had one question just because we do have a ADVA representation and the transit area. Is that, can you just explain for that? We don't have any flexibility with the transit?
Like around what's being designated?
Correct. Yeah.
My understanding is no. So they've designated that site, the Boardman Bus Exchange, on the basis that that's kind of the transit station that exists in Abbotsford, and it's kind of a rule set in the legislation.
I think what you're alluding to is that we are building a transit exchange on Montrose Street
Yes,
right
the
now. So the question
Montrose,
is it subject to the legislation?
Yeah.
Today it's not listed in the legislation. So as of what we know today, the TOA, as we call it, does not apply to the Montrose Exchange for historic downtown.
Yet.
Down the road, could the province add it? They absolutely could. We don't know if they will or if they won't. But at this stage, what we know is that only Borgwin, that 7 Oaks Mall, is subject to that legislation.
Do they have the power to add it by regulation only, or do they have to amend the act? I assume they
They
can
did
just
it
do it.
by Yeah, regulation.
It's so I think we strongly operate on.
We should
the
assume.
assumption that will be done.
That's a good point. It's speculating, but it's likely. Just the question is, when does that happen?
Just don't tell them we're building.
Okay, so just be mindful of the time. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, my name's Cyril.
Okay, cool. You're actually getting your
I'm a
Sorry.
community planner, sorry, I came up here and I was like, I'm gonna.
Just get her through.
You do. You just don't know. No. Great question, though. Okay, I'll call the question, because we have the recommendation on the floor. All in favor of the initial support of this direction? Any opposed? No, the motion carries. Thank you. Yeah, a lot. We'll have to see where the rest of this goes. I know there's, I think it's on the agenda again for this afternoon's development meeting too, so.
Get it out first.
Yeah. Being mindful of time, there was no new business when we did the adoption. Was hoping to do a bit of a roundtable, but just because of the timing, I think we'll push that to our June meeting. So just with any business arising, we'll do that at our next meeting and just move right to number 8, which is to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
No.
Alex
Stay
P.
here.
and Alex M. All in favor. Thank you so much for your extra time and staying a little bit later so we can get through the last 2 items, and I look forward to seeing you all in June.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all the presenters.
Yes, and to staff, sorry, that were sitting there the whole time.